This is a case study of the EconoLogix results-based financial planning system. We took a private practice professional who did a financial plan, and we measured 8 points of the financial condition of their household using Econometry Analytics, our proprietary measurement system. After 1 year of implementation of that plan, we took measurements of those same 8 points. And here are the results. Case study number 1. This is a private practice professional, mid-40s in age. And at the start of their financial plan, they scored a 365 on the Financial Prosperity Index. Their net worth was just under $600,000, and they were making a gross income in their practice of about $386,000. The profit margin, however, was pretty good at 28.29%, but they're only putting away about $15,000 a year into retirement plans or any kind of future income planning assets. Their total debt to assets ratio was just under 51%, which basically means that of all the assets they had, just over 50% of those assets were encumbered by debt. Their emergency fund ratio was 3.5 months, which means that they were able to handle their living expenses for 3.5 months based on money that they had in a savings account. And their household risk index, which is the indicator of how much risk a household is taking with all of their assets, came in at 4.47. Now, 1 year later, we took these same measurements again, and we can see here that the Financial Prosperity Index went up to 577. Their net worth jumped to $771,000, primarily because the practice gross income jumped to $650,000. The profit margin of the practice also went up to 37.65%, and they were able to put away $25,000 in retirement-type assets. The total debt-to-assets ratio went down to 41.98%, while their emergency fund ratio went down to 1.2 months. The household risk index came in at 4.37. So if we do a side-by-side showing the before and after, we can see that they improved across the board, with the exception of their emergency fund ratio, in which case they took money that they had in cash and simply paid off debt. Case study number 2. This is a private practice professional, mid-40s, who came to us in the start of the plan. They had a 431 as the score of their Financial Prosperity Index. Their net worth was about $1.2 million, and the gross income of their practice was just over $800,000. The profit margin of the practice was coming in just under 18%. Now, they were taking $25,000 a year and putting it into some kind of reserves, whether it be retirement or some other kind of savings, and they had just under 20% of their assets encumbered by debt, showing their debt-to-assets ratio. The emergency fund ratio was at 1.9 months, which shows that they had just under 2 months of living expenses in a savings account. And their household risk index came in at 4.41, which was actually quite high for them. 1 year later, we saw the Financial Prosperity Index jump to 750 because they got a lot of their financial planning points in. Their net worth jumped to $1.8 million, and the practice gross income improved just over 10% to $891,000. The profit margin of the practice actually went to 15.68%, while they were able to take an additional $5,000 a year and put it away for retirement use. Their total debt-to-assets ratio went down to 13.53%, while the emergency fund ratio went up to 10.2 months. And the household risk index was cut drastically down to 3.45. So you can see, when you look at the before and after econometry measurements, we see improvement in every area except for the profit margin of the practice. And we can see here that they took money that they would otherwise have taken out of the practice and spent and invested it in the practice in programs that would generate future income and growth for that practice. Case study number 3. This is a private practice professional household with the ages of about 52 to 53. At the start of the plan, they took the Financial Prosperity Index questionnaire and scored a 561 out of 850. Their net worth was about $1.8 million. The practice gross income was $1.6 million, a good producing practice. and the profit margin was about 21.3%. They were setting aside $44,000 a year in retirement-oriented assets. The total debt-to-assets ratio was 25%, which basically means that of all the assets they had, 25% of those assets were encumbered by some kind of debt. They had almost no reserves to handle emergencies in savings accounts because they had about a week of living expenses covered by their savings. And the household risk index was a 4.27, a little on the high side for their ages. 1 year later, we took these same measurements and the financial prosperity index came in at 741. Their net worth went up to just over $2 million, and the practice gross income increased to $1.684 million. The profit margin went to 14.76%, while they took $60,000 in that year and put it away for retirement-oriented assets. The total debt-to-assets ratio went down because they paid off some debt, and the emergency fund ratio went up to just over 3 months by putting money in their savings accounts. And the household risk index came down to 4.08. So if you take a look at these 8 measurements before and after, you will notice that the only one that went down was the profit margin of their practice. And anytime you put a plan in place, you realize that you're spending money that sometimes isn't producing future value. So what they did is they took income they would have taken in profit and they bought marketing programs and other strategies to help them build future income and value in that practice. So there are the results. The Econologics results-based financial planning system is about objectively measuring your progress to achieving the optimum financial condition for your household.